Okay, what we were doing was source of ethics. In source of ethics, I had outlined two sources of ethics. One is law as a source of ethic. The second is conscience as a source of ethic. Okay, so these are two specifically mentioned topics where they'll be asking you how is law a source of ethic, how useful or how disadvantageous it is, etc. and all. Next, with respect to conscience, you have what is conscience, conscience source of ethics. There is an important topic there called crisis of conscience and all. So first we'll discuss what is law and how it is a source of ethic. Now, knowing law in itself is a different idea. Like when you study polity, you know what is law. Yes? Even under Article 13, there is a definition of law given, which talks about laws made by the parliament, laws made by state legislatures, etc. and all. It also speaks about certain bylaws, etc. and all. But knowing law in ethics is slightly different. What does it mean is, how is law connected with ethics? That is the subject of study. So independently knowing what is law, that is needed in polity. But whatever you know in polity, that has to be applied in ethics, that is law as source of ethics. So basically it is combining two things. And making your job easier, because if you know polity proper, you'll know this also easily. Okay. So when you say law, what does it mean? Law generally is made by the parliament. I mean, in case it's a parliamentary system, or at the state level, it is made by the state legislatures. Okay. Now this comes under Article 13, constitutionally defined. It is there. Okay. Now when you make a law, when the parliament is making the law, it is usually a very broad picture. It paints a very broad picture. It does not tell you, like, in a specific situation, what should be done, etc. Sometimes it does not, every time. What happens? You have to bring certain specificity to these laws. So that is why you have a provision of rules in India. When I say provision of rules, what does rules mean? For example, to take an act, Prevention of Cruelties Act to Animals, Prevention of Cruelties to Animals Act. This act was framed in 1960. Okay. Now this act is the law made by the parliament. Now this act also gives the power to the environmental ministry to frame rules. Okay. So under this, many rules environmental ministry can frame. So rules are basically made by the executive. That is the ministry. In executive, there are two kinds of executive. One is your political executive. The second is the permanent executive. When I say political executive, your prime minister along with your council of ministers, with many other people. Who are those we'll discuss later. They form your political executive, meaning they implement something. But while they're implementing, it's not easy to implement a general or a broad law. You have to make certain specific rules. So that is why, if for example, you have IT Act. IT Act 2000 is the act made by the parliament, that is the law. Now this has to be implemented. So if this has to be implemented, there is a ministry. So Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Now this ministry makes rules called IT rules. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is, laws includes three things. One is law, rules and regulations. Now rules are made by the ministry. Regulations are one step below the rules. That is, they are made by a permanent executive. Like a district magistrate who is implementing a specific rule made by the ministry in a specific district. Now it is not always true that they have to strictly follow a rule only. Sometimes you have your own discretionary power as well. So you can make regulations to implement that law. For example, in Prevention of Cruelties Act 1960, there is the general spirit of the act says what? It says that you should treat animals, in a proper fashion, like while slaughtering them. It does not ban slaughtering and all, but you have to treat them with welfare. That is what it says. Now, Jallikattu as a practice, a sport practice, which is followed in Tamil Nadu, was challenged under this act. Okay. Under this act, when it was challenged, now Supreme Court gave the decision that it should be banned or prohibited. So thereafter it was challenged again. Then Supreme Court gave the decision that it should be done in a proper orderly fashion. When I say orderly fashion, no animals or no human beings should be injured in this act. When they made the decision, who is actually going to implement this? It is district magistrate in Tamil Nadu, in this certain specific district. Now, when they are implementing the order of the court, now they should have certain powers, right? That is where they make regulations, like what should be the area of the court where it is being played, at what distance people should stay. Yes, so at what distance, so all these are regulations. So what I'm trying to say is law in total includes three things: law, rules and regulations. So laws are made by legislative organs, rules and regulations are made by executive. One is the political executive, the other is the permanent executive. The framing of a law is always, I mean, if you see the designated, the real authority, it is always the parliament. These are not the real authorities. These are just for convenience. Parliamentarian cannot go, or the parliament cannot go to a local place and implement it. That is why they are given the provisions for rules and regulations. Yes? So that is why there is a check which is made. What is the check? All these rules and regulations should comply with the law. That means if you are making a rule, Environment Ministry is making a rule, it should be under the law only. If it is making a regulation, somewhere it should not violate the rule. For example, there was one cattle rules which came out in 2017. Cattle rules were made by Ministry of Environment. Now in that they had particularly banned slaughtering of cows and other class of animals. Now the act originally does not prohibit slaughtering. So it was taken to the court. The court made an observation saying that rules and regulations should follow the parent law. It is called the umbrella law or the parent law. And that is why they struck down those rules and regulations. So what I'm trying to say is the making of laws is an essential function of the legislature or the parliament. Everything else will fall under it only. You cannot violate the original laws. Okay, so this is the meaning of laws, rules and regulations. I've given the definition. Now how they act as a source of ethics is what we have to discuss. So this is from the polity point I've given definition. Now there is one more point which you have to remember with respect to laws, rules and regulations. Laws are usually considered public. There is another meaning. The first meaning I have already discussed. Second meaning is whenever, suppose you have rules, suppose you have an institution where you are working, an organization. Now those organizations also give you certain codes of conduct, right? Even a gym has a code of conduct. Like you should do this, you should not do this, etc. Now those codes of conduct, they are not called laws. Generally rules and regulations are the terms used. So rules and regulations have two meanings. Rules and regulations, one meaning I've already discussed, made by the political and the permanent executive. The other meaning of rules and regulation is it is used for the private sector. Okay, you don't use the term law for private sector. Be it a company, be it any organization, they are called rules and regulations of the company. Yes. And if you term them differently, rules and regulation of private sector, they are also called codes of conduct. Okay, there is other name for this. We'll discuss in detail separately. It's also rules and regulations in private sector are also called codes of conduct. Okay. Now, how does law become a source of ethic? Does law tell you something about ethics? Yes or no? Okay. Just for example, take any specific law. How does law act as a source of ethics? Does law tell you to do something and not to do something? Does it tell you do's and don'ts? So that way, law becomes a source of ethics. So you take any specific law, it has some or the other standing on something or the other. Like you take IT Act, what you cannot do with cyberspace is very clearly mentioned. You cannot send offensive messages. You cannot send obscene messages. Now, is it not an ethical source? So, laws always guide you ethically. What should be done, what should we do, and what shouldn't be done. And in case you don't follow that ethical acts and all, it brings penalties. So, this way law gives you a fundamental idea of ethical structure in the governance. Now, when do you say, suppose, now not all laws, now the question comes, sometimes there are very intricate issues, like, sometimes law itself is unethical. Does that happen? Laws are ethical, that is fine. Law gives you a source of ethics. You take any act, law, which is procedurally rightly followed and substantially rightly followed, that is ethical only. You take any specific act which has been passed since 1947 till date. But sometimes law is not always a source of ethics. Sometimes law disturbs you as well. Because when the parliament or the legislature is not acting in the right spirit, when you say right spirit, not your spirit and my spirit, it is spirit of the supreme. No one can question it, no one can go beyond question it is in the sense, yes, you can do, you can say this needs to be changed, etc. But going beyond this is unacceptable. Like, it could be anything. You could be any group, you could belong to any political group, ideological group, you could be a civil servant, you could be nothing in your life, anything it could be. You still have to follow this document, you have no choice. That's one thing very clear. What I'm saying is, when I say you have no choice, I'm also being very clear about the thought that you should not be given a choice. Precisely because Constitution gives you everything which is needed. Because I've not seen any constitution which gives you so much of space in terms of everything. You take any ethical dilemma today, anything you take, this will give you a solution some way or the other. Now, why this has to be protected? Because I have not found any great document, better document than this one. Because though it was written in 47, it does become a fundamental source for everything. Now, why am I giving you this idea? Because you will be always facing some kind of case studies wherein you will face a problem for decision making. Like, you may think, okay, should I go with this decision or should I go with that decision? Now, this problem will only come when you don't know if you know this properly, irrespective of whether the person who is correcting, he likes your opinion or not, very openly go with this. Because no one can say, don't follow your constitution. Even the most unscrupulous person on earth or in the country will still say, constitution is, he'll play in the name of constitution only. Yes? He cannot say, don't go don't go with the constitution. So at any point of time, no one can question you for following the obligation of the constitution. Okay. Now, why am I saying so? So it is a very disturbing moment also, because when they ask you, like, this law is disturbing. So when you are saying it is disturbing you, should you follow or shouldn't you follow? In that case, what is the benchmark you are using to judge whether the law is correct or not? See, these days there has been a trend of procedural incorrectness. Yes, in making laws. You've seen the farm bills. Farm protests are also concocted. They are concocted as being led by Congress, Khalistani movement. International linkages are there for this. And if this is the situation of a country, like, of this government, I don't know how this country is going to survive. It's a very bleak and a very poor situation today. Like it or not, you might be a great supporter of this government. Okay, if you had an issue with minorities, CA, etc., that's a different issue. What is the problem with farm? What is your problem with talking to farmers? Can't you come out and talk? It shows sheer arrogance. It shows you don't want to speak, that you don't want to talk to the person or talk to the community, and whichever communities. So when I'm saying today there is a disturbing, this issue is very prominent, it's in the face. There are certain laws which are being passed, which are procedurally incorrect and which are substantively incorrect. You take farm bills only. However, farm bills passed, Lok Sabha, they got it passed because they know they have the majority. We have given a great majority, like 400 seats, 3 out of 3 or 300 odd and all. Now, in that case, they don't need to care about the opposition and all. This is the classical case for any particular parliamentary government. If you give a huge majority, if you start voting for the PM, you'll get this majority, and after a point, the PM will not listen to you. This is what is happening today. Now, it's not that you should not vote for the person, you should vote wisely in terms of giving some sort of, not a complete majority, where the person will at least listen, because democracy does not work only with government, it also works on the basis of opposition. Now, you say opposition is not doing anything. Where is the opposition in the first place? 40 seats, is that an opposition? Like, if you have to say that a constructive opposition has to be there, you give them 100 seats or something, then they'll say, play some constructive role. There are no MPs only. All you have to do is tweet every day in the morning. That's what you're doing, because you have no role in the parliament. Okay, so why it has happened, why procedurally incorrect? Because I've got very clear reasons. How was the farm bill passed? Whenever there is a voting procedure in any bill, what is the voting procedure? There are 3 stages of vote. Okay, so first is, what you do is you have a voice vote. Okay, when the bill is moved, you say yes or no. Now, suppose one of the person, even at least one MP, questions it, says that no, I'm not happy with the voice vote, then they go for the second vote. That is called they stand in the seat. They get up. That's the second vote. It is if the first procedure is challenged. Now somebody is unhappy. One MP is also unhappy. And he says, okay, I'm not happy with the standing also. Then happens division of voting. Division is the house will be divided. Who are on the yes side, who are on the no side. Here what happens is you have an automatic vote recorder equipment you have. So it will be recorded who voted and how they voted. In the first and the second stage, you don't usually have. And most of the bills in India, they go through only voice vote. Second and third, they don't go. What happened in farm bills? They surely knew that one or two clauses will not get passed, amendments. So one or two amendments they wanted to make, the opposition, generally the entire, not just Congress, but other parties and all. So they wanted MSPP to be included. So when it was being passed, the presiding officer, the most neutral person, the Rajya Sabha's presiding officer, he does not look up. Because I don't know whether you watch Rajya Sabha proceedings. I watch because I get to know what should be done. So he does not raise his head. He keeps on, I mean, people are shouting. There are at least 10 people who wants the second division. So what he does is he does not even look at them. He continues with the procedure and the bill gets passed. This is a pure constitutional violation. This has at any point of time in the parliament not happened. If this is not to be taken seriously, then I don't think so you're taking constitution seriously. Because it will set a precedent. When I say precedent, what has happened? Today BJP is doing, tomorrow Congress will be doing. Who will be fooled in this act? People who are conscious of their voting choice. Unconscious, subconscious people I'm not discussing, who don't know what is to be a citizen and all. I consciously go and vote and I expect something from the government. We are being fooled, yes? So what I'm saying is there is a procedural incorrectness these days being following. Many bills are being passed off as money bills. And in the very first place, farmer bill is agriculture. On agriculture is a state subject. You center at any point of time cannot make a law on agriculture. It is not there. It is a violation of federalism. So two important things have been violated. Your voting procedure has been violated. Your federal provision has been violated. Federalism is a basic structure. In S.R. Bommai case, 1994, it has been clearly given that federalism is a basic structure. So what I'm saying is, when a law is procedurally incorrect, you have every right to protest it, or you have every right not to follow it. That's why people are on the streets. Otherwise, they would not be on the streets. They know there is something fishy about this. Yes, it is being given, it is being done for a specific reason. Corporate world is being ushered in. Next is substantively right. Sometimes the bill, content of the bill itself is so problematic. Clearly, everybody knows Citizenship Amendment Act is a clear violation of Article 14. Article 14 gives you right to equality for everybody, not citizens. So there are, okay, when the Citizenship Amendment Act came out, have you seen the nature of protest and how it has been followed? And someone who is protesting, for the first time in India, you have seen pro-protest. Pro-protest is, pro-CA also has been started. I mean, is this, it has already been passed. It's a law. So when it has been made into a law, what is the reason for pro-protest? Okay, leave pro-protest now. Second is, many who do not know or have never read Constitution in their life, they don't know. My friends don't know. And those people are like proper power holders. Like when I say power holders, they're heads of some committees and all. So they start sharing videos in those communities and all that they're talking about commentary on Constitution. They say fundamental rights are not applicable to the outsiders. Read Article 14, you'll get to know. If you just read Article 15, 16 and all, if you read superficially, then you'll give all wrong things only. So substantively, even if Harish Salve says, Harish Salve said that, he made a very good defense of it, that he said that there is nothing unconstitutional about it, but it's a clear violation of Article 14. The Supreme Court may give a different judgment, anybody could give a different judgment, but it's a violation. Now if you think tomorrow you give me an argument saying that Article 14 violation is fine, then that could be a different thing, but it's a violation. So what I'm trying to say is, if a law is disturbing in terms of how it is procedurally incorrect or substantively incorrect, then you have every right to protest it. It cannot be a source of ethics. Is that clear? Now, in testing whether a law is actually correct or incorrect, it is not your decision. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that I don't like Citizenship Amendment Act, nor I'm saying I don't like farm bills. I'm saying it is not in line with the constitution which I have ascribed to. Okay, it's not my duty, it's the government's duty also to protect the constitution. Is that clear? Okay. So what I have discussed till now is what is law, what are the different forms of law, rules, regulations, public and private sector. Thereafter I've discussed how law can be a source of ethics. Also law can sometimes not be a source of ethics itself, because you have to question sometimes the law itself. And when you're questioning the law, you have to take the help of higher law. The higher law is constitution, the fundamental law. Now there are certain cases where you have to question the constitution also. Now that is a higher level of understanding. Now we'll come to that very later. Like how do you question you question the constitution within using the constitution itself. For example, LGBT rights was never mentioned. Now how did you come to that conclusion? You came to the conclusion with respect to Article 15, the word sex is there. Yes, Supreme Court very clearly says that sex in this does not just mean binaries, male and female. It also means transgender. It also means other sexual orientations. Yes, so that way, even though you are questioning constitution, you are questioning within the limits only. It's always open to interpretation. Is that clear? Okay, now this is slightly higher, like whenever you face such case studies where you face a difficulty, like what stand should I take and all, there I'll tell you what should you do in such cases, ethical dilemma cases. Now, when you talk about law as a source of ethics, there are certain advantages. What are the advantages? When you say law is a source of ethics, what is the advantage? Does it give you a general guideline? Once you make a law on something, almost 130 crore people are there in India. If every person has his own set of ethical ideas, what will happen? Anarchy, chaos. But once a law is made, what will happen? It will give you a certain general guideline. So everybody will start moving in that direction only. So it gives you a general guideline. Second is it prevents conflicts. Because if everybody has his own notion of what is good or bad, in that case it will lead to conflicts. Yes? Now in that, so what is the function of a law as a source of ethics? That it prevents conflicts. More importantly, it builds public morality. Can you give me an example of this? When I say build public morality, something should not have existed. It should cultivate. It should not be there in the public first. Later, it comes in the constitution, then goes on implementing. For example, Section 377 itself. Section 377 speaks about certain acts of intercourse, carnal intercourse and all, as against the order of nature. Now, when this was declared invalid, some parts of it were declared unconstitutional. Now, what has happened? Law is setting a trend for you. It is setting a pattern. What it is saying, henceforth, if somebody stigmatizes people with a sexual orientation different from heterosexuality, they will be penalized. Yes or no? So it is building something which was not existing in the society. Yes or no? So it builds public morality. Next is, at times it confirms private to public morality. At times, not always. For example, recently there was an adultery law which was changed by the Supreme Court in Joseph Shine case. We'll discuss this in detail when we do polity. What did it say? Adultery is a matter of, it's a private thing between two individuals. Now state cannot intervene there. So what it is doing, it is confirming some private morality to the public morality. What is the public morality here? Supreme Court is giving a judgment, but adultery being a private affair, that is now in conformity with the public morality. So sometimes what happens, it may give a ruling on the public itself in general, or sometimes it may give ruling on a private issue. Domestic Violence Act, suppose. Domestic Violence Act is a private affair, family. Now, you may ask a question, why should I follow that? Because it's between me and my wife. But what I'm trying to say is, law at times not only builds public, it also builds private morality as well, at times, not always, okay? Because entering the area of family may have its own problems also, okay? What are the disadvantages of law as a source of ethics? Are there disadvantages? Law is very generic in nature. It will not tell you what you should do in a specific situation. Yes, law only says don't do this, don't do that. Yes, suppose you are faced with a very peculiar situation. Peculiar situation is a small event. I'll give an example. Citizenship rules are there there was tribunals and all formed under NRC. Now NRC rules will be given. They'll say this is how you have to give a citizenship. Okay. Now you are a person who is part of the tribunal. You're heading the tribunal. There is an old woman who comes, and you know how is the record system in India. Record system is you don't have any record of yourself, meaning you don't know. I mean, you don't have a ration card, you don't have this one, the Aadhaar card, nor you have a patta related to your land, nor you have a ownership of your house. And this is a classical condition in India. Yes, and Northeast it is very particular because every time the floods comes, their entire documentation is lost. Yes, now in such a situation, an old woman who does not have anyone, there is no family tree system also to trace. She is coming for citizenship, and you clearly know that she is not lying. Yes, but the rules say that you have to stick to these rules. If these documents are there, you have to give the citizenship. Now what happens? Law will not come to help during that period. Yes or no? Law is very generic. It will not help you deal with a specific situation. It will not give you solutions regarding ethical dilemmas and all. Yes, so that is the problem with the law. The other problem with the law is law sometimes you strictly follow. It will bring rigidity. Rigidity is, suppose you know that that woman does not have a document, and you also know that there is a clear case of she being a part of India, and if you are still scrupulous and say that no, you have to still follow the rules only, I think then that is inhuman. So that is rigidity. Law brings, if you strictly follow, it brings rigidity. There are certain schools which say that you have to strictly follow a rule. That's called deontological school. We'll discuss that. What is that school? Okay. So deontological school says strictly prescribed to rules and all. In such situations, law does not come to help, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Now one law which you have to study, which has already been asked as well in 2019 only, constitutional morality.